Ashish, I would like to welcome you to this show. It's the umbrella name is Next Story, where we are exploring what's coming and how people can adjust. And in this segment, we are talking about personal next. And what better person than to have you, who has gone through the journey in the media industry, tremendous journey. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
What an amazing journey you have had. You know, in the space of media, what tremendous transformation, and you have been tremendously successful. Now, business and creative head for many people want to be in that space, but they don't know how much transformation has to go through. So, I would like to hear your story of what transformation you went through at a personal level to reach this zenith of success, if I can call it, in this new age media.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for the kind words, the checks in the mail. So, I don't know about the zenith of success. It's actually I think the ride is just getting started. Very exciting times ahead. And honestly, I think we all need to sign up to be people who have a permanent learner's license. That's important to really keep learning, keep at it, and then figure it out because everyone's still trying to just figure it out, frankly. So as far as the ride is concerned, it's been quite fascinating. I started out writing copy, and then this middle class Maharashtra thing happened, saying, "Are you mad? You can't be a writer for a living. Get a real job." You know. So I did the sensible thing. Went to business school, and still wanted to be close to creative. The only options when I started out, which is sometime early 90s, were advertising. So I went back to advertising, but I crossed over to the dark side. I switched to strategy, client servicing, account planning. I did that at Lintas for about 5 years, and MTV came along, and that was just way too exciting a brand to kind of decline. While I was loving what I was doing in advertising because I got a great kick out of, being the new business boy at Lintas. We used to walk away with 90% of the pitches that we made, and MTV came along, and that was an incredible ride. I owe a large part of what I've been able to learn, I'm being able to do due to my learning at MTV, of really always working with a set of constraints in terms of budgets and things that you have to play with in terms of resources. But I was fortunate to be surrounded by some of the most creative people I've had the good fortune to work with, and just a tremendous amount of learning, and it made me young, just to be surrounded with that kind of energy. And I made a lateral shift out of marketing, which is what I joined and I was running, to creative and content, and eventually took on the P&L responsibility. And that's been a great learning that, being profitable gives you the luxury to be creative, you know. So that balance is where the business and creative side kind of married, where you could make a choice and say, you know what, this one is a risk worth taking. It's not going to pay for itself right now, but hang in there. Don't be afraid of screwing up, and 2 years from today it's going to probably pay the bills for everything else that you're trying to do. And that's, for example, how Roadies happened, which is one of the most popular shows that we did back then. And then I spent about 12 years at Viacom doing a variety of things, and there was movies which was always on my bucket list, and somewhere I needed to just take that leap, and I wasn't getting any younger. So as luck would have it, timing was perfect, and Yash Films came along, and it's the University of Filmmaking. I mean, if you ever really want to make movies, I can't think of a better place to do that. And I took a leap, joined YRF to set up their youth film studio, which is called Y Films. And again, I've been very fortunate that every year and a half or every couple of years, I've been able to kind of reinvent myself. I've been pretty much mandated to reinvent myself with a new addition to the profile. So right from there, I added on brand partnerships, which is across the entire YRF portfolio of associations with brands for marketing and promotions and so on and so forth. Talent management came along, which was not something I'd done before, but hey, nothing is rocket science really. You'll figure it out. It's common science, a common sense really beyond a point. So I added that on. And then of course, sometime late last year is when we took finally this crazy leap without a parachute, almost like what just happened recently, right? That free fall into the world of original digital content. And that's been quite a ride. So like I said, the learner's still learning, and fortunately along the way having a lot of fun.
So if I can get you to focus on your shift from MTV to Y Films, where you followed your passion because you always wanted to do films. That's what you mentioned. what was going through in your mind? What were the fears? What are the things which you were hanging on to in that shift, and what did you need to give up
Sure.
in that shift?
Well, it's something that was always on my bucket list, like I mentioned, that, I want to make a movie someday. So while that was something that really excited me, I couldn't think of a better place to do that. So those were pieces that gave me comfort. I think I had a lot of comfort with Aditya Chopra because I think he's a fantastic storyteller and a great leader. But having said that, somewhere inside I was just peeing my pants. Like, hey, wait a minute. All said and done, I've been in a multinational kind of a setup all my life, be it Lintas, be it Viacom, 12 years at Viacom. And this is a very entrepreneurial Punjabi family household setup. What is his definition of youth films is entirely different from how I'm seeing it. And the team was essentially two people. That was me and a laptop and a person I happened to hire. And how am I really going to be able to do that? And really the lead times on making a movie are much longer than what you do in broadcast, right? At MTV, the advantage was we're thinking about something in the morning, and by tomorrow, that thing would be up on air. Versus in a film, no matter how fast and how tight you crunch your lead time, it's like making a baby. It's 9 months from the word go. So those were pieces I needed to wrap my head around, a much tighter, sharper team. Having said that, the basic parameters remained the same of storytelling, of talking to young people, because I was still talking to the same audience that I was doing at MTV. And given how young our country is, I mean, 65% of our population is below 35. Even if you're talking just 15 to 35, that's more than the entire population of the US and Japan put together. So that's a very large audience. So you can't really ignore that audience anymore, no matter what you're doing. It's not just about you selling jeans or sneakers, but even if you're selling life insurance, you better be talking to these people. So those parameters were spaces that came a little more naturally to me. So that gave me a certain amount of comfort. But I think wrapping my head around potentially what felt like a new cultural setup, what was in that sense not as large a setup for the world uh, in terms of number of people working there at MTV versus Y Films or YRF. The lead times on telling a story were pieces that I was kind of figuring out. And of course, the business model on films is like the eighth wonder of the world. It makes no sense at all. I don't know why people do it. It's unlike you doing a Coca-Cola where you crack the magic formula. There's the secret formula, and then you've now bottled it, and then you're selling it since 100+ years. If you've cracked an incredible film, no longer can you just keep juicing that. It's back to ground zero for your next feature. So I'm like, really? Why do you guys do that? You really have, I can't figure it out. And ticket sales are the only thing that never goes up. It only goes down, right? So I'm like, really, what an insane business it is. So you need to be slightly crazy and, of course, completely passionate to really be in this business. And I guess I have both parts in equal measure. So it was an easy choice.
So, since you were talking about your qualities, and you were earlier describing your son, who is 10 years old, as a bigger prankster than you, maybe you can share with us, in your interaction with your 10-year-old or your niece or somebody, what are the things that you bring back to work, listening to them and learning from them?
I think it's really interesting. Just about last week, I was invited to this. I had to attend one of those parent-teacher meetings, curriculum nights in school. And it's the challenge of the modern parent, right, or modern parenting. When we were growing up, if you had rotten scores on your report card, you just got whacked and your life got sorted. That number achhe nahi hai, tapad gao. But it's no longer the same, right? Now with kids today, it's the whole conversation of let's talk. Okay, so you're still kind of figuring that out. And I went to this parent teacher meeting, and I happened to have this conversation with my son's teacher, who's the language teacher. And I'm like, really, language teacher? He speaks all right. He speaks a lot. Clearly gets that from me. But she just put things in perspective for me, and that's what I kind of took back in a very big way. That how dramatically and fundamentally communication has changed from the time we were growing up to now. I mean, if you think about it, there's just multiple modes and tools and means of communication. When we were growing up, it was primarily the landline, potentially a chit that you threw across the classroom when you saw a pretty girl, or maybe an inland letter or a postcard with her pen pal who you liked somewhere. Versus now, every alternate day, there is a new platform or a social media device or thing which is being invented. Just when you think you figured out Instagram, out comes Snapchat. And there's people doing face swaps and adding filters and becoming puppies and rabbits. When you think you figured that out, there's Periscope. When you think you've cracked that, there's suddenly Wine. So there's just multiple means of communication. One. Two, it's instant. Unlike when I was communicating with this girl I had this heavy crush on in the US, I would write her a letter, a long form, long hand letter, and it's a fortnight from the time I've shipped it to it getting to her, and then a fortnight more for it to come back. And now it's instant, right? I can speak to you as rapidly or as instantly as I can to someone in Canada, and there's Shelja on on a Skype call plugged in right now who's talking to us real time. And that's also dramatically changed how we are communicating or how we need to communicate. Three, it's also short. There's news breaking in 140 characters all the time. So that patience has just shrunk for this generation dramatically. And that also impacts the way we construct content and communication. It's also very casual. There's no longer cheers, sir, yours sincerely. There's formal business email gets signed off saying cheers, and it's not a big deal, right? And in fact, it's really odd if it's signed off otherwise. Like, okay, this guy seems like a really boring suit. I'm not sure if I want to do business with this guy. I'm not sure how much fun I'll have doing that. So that's another big shift. It's also not just textual anymore. It has become so visual. I mean, from emojis and stickers and memes and kittens playing with balls, those are the kind of things kids are using to communicate, and also global. It's simultaneously plugged in everywhere. I mean, think about the ice bucket challenge. There's people in Bombay, of course, with the lashing rains right now, don't think there's a water problem, but there's water shortage pretty much everywhere, and there's people talking about the ice bucket challenge, sitting somewhere in a part of Maharashtra where there's no water. So just think about how massively global communication has become. And that's dramatically shifting the way we tell stories, the way we communicate, the way we design marketing. So that became, and that's just something that's taken for granted for young people. So it's almost like kids are being born, and as soon as they pop out of the womb, they're taking a selfie with the doctor, in the OT. So, and that's young people today, right? So that I think is the one big takeaway that I kind of had to wrap my head around as I look at young people growing up today.
Very interesting. So, Ashish, I want you to focus on a little bit about your failures. And I mean, I have heard from many others that failure is a better teacher than the success. And have you had any failures? And what lessons did you take from those?
I had lots, and I think you're absolutely right. I think the trick is, I think, for most people to not be afraid to fail. I think the biggest learning that I've had from some of these, so to speak, I wouldn't call them failures, but learnings, frankly, more than failures, is that it made me brave. It made me make sure that for my team and the people I work with, I make the environment a very safe place to fail. And that's really important. That you should not be afraid to mess up, to screw up. The important thing is to not give up after that. And I mean, success can be a massive honey trap that you could land up getting stuck in. And that's very reflective, and especially in an industry like Bollywood. That, hey, you know what? Action films seem to be working. Let's all make an action movie. Let's all now do the rom-com, or let's all do a bikes and babes film. And if that happened, we would only be making Dhoom 15, Dhoom 16, Dhoom 17, and so on and so forth. That's where a Dam Laga Ke Haisha wouldn't happen. And it's fine to actually do that. And that, I think, would be the primary learning that one has had from, so to speak, a setback, or, so to speak, something that may not have had the same success that one hoped for. At times, it could have been something that was ahead of its curve in terms of timing. So yeah, I've had several. I mean, it extends across a variety of things. So be it during my advertising days, maybe creating a campaign which I thought was super exciting, but obviously didn't connect at all with the audience. It's just something that probably got 3 people in the advertising agency excited about winning an award, and that's just fundamentally wrong. That you took your eye off the ball, and just focused on the 5 people in the room giving each other high fives, versus really the consumer who it's meant for, or for that matter, some potentially shows that we attempted at an MTV, where I think maybe some of them were ahead of the curve, that we needed to wait for the right timing to let it roll out. or for that matter, maybe a couple of films that we would have tried at YRF that at times, because a film felt safe, that it became a project, it no longer became a story. And that was fundamentally wrong. That I think you needed to go and trust your gut a little more in terms of what's going to work versus here's data telling you, here's information, statistics telling you that, nahi yaar, ye to successful hai. And I think that I don't think there's any data or anyone who can really tell you what's going to work, especially in Bollywood.
Can you share with us, Ashish, in creative industry, how are the big decisions made? Is it based on data or gut?
You know, actually, it's interesting you should ask me that because it's usually a mix. There's an interesting line that I'd heard that you use data to pick stocks and you use judgment to pick your spouse. So it's pretty much the same, right? You use analytics for data and you use gut for where emotion is involved. And a lot of those creative decisions in terms of what content to greenlight eventually needs to be driven completely by what you feel and what you connect with. Having said that, you need to use data and insights to trigger your marketing of how to now get it out there to as many people as possible. And often your gut or your instincts are based on a lot of experiences or information or data that you gathered over a period of time. But it's important to use that data not as a shackle, but as a springboard to lift off. So there could be data which gives you a trigger saying, hey, you know what? Here are a bunch of really interesting touch points which are popping up as a trend. For example, same-sex bonding among women, or for that matter, small town stories, tier 2, tier 3 is what's really exploding. So let's bring in not just the traditional urban, cool South Bombay stories, but let's go and reflect flavor in something like a Bang Baja Barat, which is very Delhi, or for that matter, Dam Laga Ke Haisha, which could be set in a Rishikesh. So those are things that then trigger, but eventually the story is not driven by, you know what, let's do a story because data is telling me let's make a movie about Game of Thrones because it's so successful. But because the story eventually spoke to you somewhere in your gut and your heart, you said, this is a story, not only do I want to tell it, but I'd love to hear it. So you go.
Very interesting. But I'm going to push you a little bit there, right? Because this is a hot topic right now in the industry. The whole cognitive model, which goes beyond data. It actually does pattern recognition. It overlays it with artificial intelligence. Do you believe part of the gut will get replaced by cognitive computing or cognitive models, and human beings would be left to deal with very cold data-driven decision?
You know, I think that's the biggest challenge that marketeers are going to have going forward. It's interesting because, you know, as technology improves, I think what it's doing is becoming more and more human. I mean, you look at people now joking with a Siri, or for that matter, Google smartening up and being able to predict what it is that you really are looking for, or what is more relevant information being served up, or hell, Pokemon Go, anyone, virtual reality mimicking humanity. The danger is going to be as machines imitate humans, humans starting to imitate machines. Our biggest challenge as marketeers or content creators is not going to be about tackling the new social media platform that emerges, or using technology to connect with audiences. But our biggest challenge or task is going to be how to be more human, how to deliver the most real human experiences on the web and otherwise. Pretty much just the way as my WhatsApp message is delivered, I know it's delivered and it's read. I'm not going to wait 30 minutes for a response from my wife or girlfriend. The same interaction is going to be expected out of your consumer engagement saying, I'm not waiting 3 days for customer care to get back to me.
I agree with you. And, you know, the success or failure gets amplified in Bollywood fairly quickly, absolutely, right? So let me move to the stage where, you know, people want to know what are the principles they need to follow to transform? Should they transform? Why can't they just hang on to what they have been doing and doing well if they are successful? So what are the few tips you would like to pass on to others, saying that focus on these three things because that's what I have focused on, and that may help you. You have to contextualize it, of course.
Sure.
That may help you to go through self-transformation successfully.
Sure. Like I said, at least as far as my personal take on that is concerned, Ganesh, it's always been, I think it's important to have a permanent learner's license, you know, because I think there might be things that you're good at, but they just may not be relevant anymore. It's what happened to a lot of the record labels. They were still holding on to being a cassette or a CD company, and that's just not how music was being consumed or delivered anymore, and that's happening across touch points. So I think it's really important to be aware of that, and it's essential not for success; it's essential for survival. So, if at all, there are kind of three attributes or pieces that are essential or should be a constant, and this is a cliche that change is the only constant, but it's true, that will hopefully keep you steady. Uh, and what I try to, I think, follow or reflect are: one, I think it's essential to have a slight amount of madness or insanity, in pretty much anything and everything that you do. Otherwise, you'll get boxed in and get stuck with this is how it's done. Who said that? Henry Ford, if he really asked his consumers what they wanted, they would have probably asked for, as he said, faster horses. The car wouldn't have happened. So on paper, something like a Dhoom should have never happened. It was being designed with three flop actors. Abhishek at that stage, John Abraham and Uday Chopra. I mean, who could have watched that? But there was just something instinctive about a film which had no other drama, melodrama, emotion. Banao yaar. And people might say, that's just sounds plain stupid. Why would you do that? Who's going to watch this? It's never a film that fails, right? It's the budget of a film that fails. So give me a number and we'll work within that, but we'll make it happen. And that's gone on to become one of the biggest franchises that we've created over a period of time. So I think that slight amount of insanity is, I think, probably the number one thing that I'd place on the table. Two, I think the ability to take risks. I think that's very, very essential across things. Like for instance, and I'll rewind back to my earlier job at MTV when we did a roadies, and that was probably one of the most expensive shows that the category music television or youth television had done, and they were like, "This is suicidal." And like I said, being profitable gives you the luxury to be creative, but at the same time, it's important to wear a dual hat. That you needed to be able to take a risk and punt on. This is something which I know right now we're going to bleed through our backsides, right now. But I know if it fires and it goes well, it will really be a big transformation for the category. We are no longer just people who are going to be playing back-to-back music because that category is dying. It's become a commodity. That differentiation needed to come from the format of reality. So it's actually the first reality show that happened on television in India, and an original format not adapted from the West, like a Idol or Got Talent or one of those pieces. So I knew it was a big risk, but I kind of figured it out because I wore a dual hat of business and creative head that, what, I'm going to bleed on this one, but I'll make up for it by doing a bunch of these smaller pieces like a Bakra and a Fully Faltu and a Style Check and a Love Line and all of that. And 2 years from today, this show is going to fund not just all of these other shows, but everyone else's salaries for the company. So that ability to take a risk is essential. I think that's the second most important trait. And third is to be just probably relentless. Relentless to the extent of being painful and annoying and not giving up. Like we did this insane, completely batshit crazy idea where we were launching a band, and it wasn't a traditional music band or a pop band. It was a band of India's first transgender band. It had 6 people from the LGBT community, transgenders who are called hijras, who we were creating a band with, and it sounds like a completely mad idea. Like, who would listen to these guys? And I think that was important. Some of these things you do not because they get you revenue or they get you ratings or recognition. They don't. But you do them because they're the right thing to do. And I think it was important at a brand level or whatever for the transformation of the brand that we also do these things to do that. And there's no Indian Idol for transgenders. There is no India Got Talent LGBT edition. So how are we really going to go and find them? And there were enough times when we were saying, hey, you know what, it's never going to happen. We're not going to find these guys. But we just kept at it. It took us 6 months to find these people. And I think that spirit of not giving up, that relentless pursuit really paid off. I think at so many multiple levels, it brought home India's first Cannes Grand Prix Glass Lion, and it's just beyond all the awards and the multiple million views online and the great media pickup and all of that apart, it's just given us so much emotional and creative satisfaction. And beyond all of that, when someone comes in and says that, you know what, and now I've started just looking at my interaction with this community very, very differently. The next time they pull up at a traffic light next to me, I don't roll up the window. Or when someone from the band talks about how what's changed for them. It's not just the fact that they're being recognized now because they're now potentially stars, but the fact that they've received a phone call after 14 years from someone saying, you know what, long time, let's grab dinner. And this is a father who threw that person out of the family. That just really just hits you somewhere hard and says, you know what, I'm glad I didn't give up.
Real human story. So, Ashish, what would you be open to some quick fire round? I will give you a word and you respond with a sentence or whatever. Youth.
Can never figure it out.
Technology.
A means to an end.
Bollywood.
Fun.
IT services industry.
Whoa, what is that? What the F?
On that note, thank you so much, Ashish, for being here. I personally learned quite a bit based on what you have shared. I hope to use many of those principles in my own sphere of work, and hopefully others would use it too, because your success is intoxicating. So congratulations on your success, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much.